Good afternoon and welcome to the NatWest Powering Our Community series. At NatWest, our purpose is to champion enterprise by helping to remove the barriers that too many face. We have an ambition to remove those barriers and support more diverse-led businesses to succeed. There are a few ways in which we provide support to small businesses. One of these being our Business Builder, a virtual tool to support businesses who are looking to grow and those looking to start up. This programme supports early and idea stage businesses right the way through to established businesses looking to pivot or diversify their business model, offering digital and event-based learning and a digital community from which you can grow your network and learn from your peers. Our digital business hub provides content relevant for your business in the form of articles, videos and toolkits, which provide intelligent and practical solutions to everyday business challenges. So if you have a business need and want to know more about some of the ways we may be able to support you, then please do feel free to get in touch. Now on to our Powering Our Community series. I'm very excited to welcome you to today's session, which is part of a series of webinars which are focused on supporting Black, Asian and ethnic minority business owners. Resilience has been described as the capacity to bounce back from adversity, and over the past 8 months, we've all experienced the need for an increased resilience, especially when facing uncertainty. Improving your resilience means you're able to better manage stress and rebuild after a setback. Before I introduce today's speaker, I just wanted to go over a bit of housekeeping. Please feel free to use the comment function to connect with each other by sharing who you are, where you're from and your business, and to post your questions. I'm extremely excited to welcome Sonya Barlow today, an award-winning diversity business coach and motivational speaker, focusing on empowering young professionals in tech. She has delivered 2 TEDx talks, European keynotes, and delivered over 200 workshops, as well as having her business-based articles published in the Metro newspaper and Sifted EU. Sonya has partnered with many global companies, including but not limited to Google, Oxford University and PwC. And in 2020, she was named as one of the most influential women in tech and was the winner of the Women in Software Changemakers. In 2021, Sonya will be a published author sharing her debut handbook on entrepreneurship, business and becoming your own boss. So I'm extremely pleased that she was able to join us today, but also during this exciting Global Entrepreneurship Week. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Sonya. Thank you for being with us today.
Oh, thank you so much. That was such a great introduction.
I try.
Super nice. Yeah, I'm really grateful to be here and to work with NatWest and work with yourself closely. It is amazing to be here during Global Entrepreneurship Week and to talk about something which is around resilience and also mental health, especially because just this morning there was a report released to say that double the amount of 16 to 35-year-olds are feeling lonely. They're feeling like they lack community. And most importantly, resilience is a skill or a muscle that most of us don't necessarily have, but we need to build.
So it's a very timely talk and I'm really, really excited to hear it. So I will let you take it away.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you to everyone who's joined. As mentioned, my name is Sonya Barlow. We encourage comments and questions and thoughts throughout. I'm going to lead us through a presentation for the next 15 minutes or so, and then we'll start a live Q&A. Please, at any point, feel free to comment, share some information, and most importantly, get involved so that you feel like you have not only learned something today, but you're taking away a little bit of resilience as you go across. Originally, when we planned this session, it was just to be around resilience, but given the current climate and what we are all feeling, thinking, and believing, I believe that we should also be talking about mental health, and that's something I'll be covering today. Just following on from the kind introduction, and to share a little bit of my story with you all, I graduated in 2015 and fell into the world of technology. Tech is a global industry. It's ever-changing. It's extremely rapid. But in 2015, what happened was I found myself being the only woman of color, the only young person, the only brown woman. And though that didn't necessarily affect me then, it did by the time I got to 2018. I found myself extremely lonely, uncomfortable in my sense of identity, and most importantly, feeling quite lost. And I had no sense of resiliency or any muscles that you would think would cater to becoming or believing that you or one is resilient. In 2018, I founded a brunch club called Like-Minded Females. Ironically, no one actually showed up to brunch. And so that in itself was something which I had to very much move past and find the sense of confidence to try again. Today, the Like-Minded Females Network is a global social enterprise titled as the LMF Network. We have over 30,000 in global following, have delivered over 150 workshops, upskilled over 5,000 people. And fundamentally, our core mission is to bridge the skills gap and change the narrative of inclusion through a global mentorship scheme, life skills workshops, and supportive community. Alongside that, as was kindly mentioned, I'm a TEDx speaker, diversity consultant, a mental health advocate, and will be a published author in 2021. And here are some of the brands that I've worked with. 1 in 4 of us suffer from mental health and 1 in 5 are lonely. And just this morning, there was a report released via the BBC that mentioned and spoke about the figures when it comes to loneliness only increasing. Of course, COVID, lockdown, and the barriers that have been placed upon us don't help. The fact that we are now in November and autumn weather is getting darker quicker than it used to. The time has changed. That doesn't help. According to the Office of National Statistics, 4.2 million adults feel always or often lonely, which is nearly double the number before the pandemic. And if that wasn't bad enough, it's actually 16 to 29-year-olds that are more likely, or twice as likely even, to suffer from loneliness compared to over 70s or those who are elder. Now, why are these stats important? They're important because they shine a light on the global pandemic today. They shine a light on us as individuals, as consumers, as community members, and shine a light on the feelings of feeling lost and disconnected, and most importantly, isolated from one another. But fundamentally, 3 billion people are online and 70% are looking for community. What we're going to discuss today is the concept of failing and failure, is how we can build our resilience muscle. But though not to double what I've already shared via my TED Talk, we're also going to talk about imposter syndrome, neurodiversity, and how to have these conversations within our workplaces, with our friends, with our family, and within our community. When did I know that I felt lost and I necessarily didn't have a sense of identity, but most importantly, I had no resilience muscle? It's a couple of years ago when I started suffering from chronic migraines and my own mental health issues. I remember going to the doctors and having a discussion, but most importantly, I remember getting a doctor's note and taking it into my workplace and saying, hey, well, I don't feel great. I don't necessarily want to take a day off, but I don't feel great. Can we please adapt our working culture? Can we adapt our lifestyle to accommodate? I'm still hardworking. I'm still proactive. I still want to do things we're doing. But most importantly, I want to do it so I feel better and so I feel stronger. And I remember the feedback being, well, you look okay, so we don't believe you. And that's really where life took its own turn. We're going to talk about neurodiversity because that's something that most of us don't necessarily know about, but is something that we should be focused on. Neurodiversity is fundamentally the way your brain works. Resiliency, what I believe resiliency to be, is a muscle. It's a constant muscle. It's a part of your brain that reminds you that you are good enough, you are capable enough, you are strong enough, and you can do this. The same way that we have to train our muscles when we go to the gym, or we have to continuously cook to become better chefs in the kitchen, we have to train our muscle of resiliency to believe and to become stronger. But when your brain works differently, when you are given various circumstances and given Global Entrepreneurship Week, when you are having to pivot not only your life, your business, and your brand, often that's not easy and it's uncomfortable. So neurodiversity shows us that those who are going through mental health have a depth of thinking. They are expressive, but at the same time, they often find themselves lost in their own thoughts. They have what it takes to be more resilient. Then you have acquired neurodiversity, which is basic empathy skills, adaptability, flexibility, and again, that just shows you are resilient. Why is this important? Because resilience is defined as the power, the force, the figure of being able to bounce back from when something goes wrong. You're probably watching this thinking, well, what could have possibly gone wrong? To the extent that you are talking about this live on air and trying to help people through same or similar circumstances. Well, when I started my work life, I wasn't well prepared, let's say, for a corporate career, and so I didn't necessarily pass probation. I haven't quite fit into the mold of corporate working, and so 2 out of 3 job roles haven't gone to plan, and I've left earlier than expected. In 2019, I was meant to start a PhD, which unfortunately I wasn't able to due to health circumstances. And most importantly, I didn't look after myself. So I spent 6 weeks on sick leave and suffering. I believe that failure comes with resilience. And so for us to fail, we must have something that we're trying to strive for. We must have something that we are focusing on, which is not just work, which is not just our corporate world and our career, it's us as individuals. The other thing which I want to focus on, which many of us don't talk about, is what kind of personality type are you? Turns out that I also had a lack of identity even, felt lonely, had no community, didn't really understand the resilience muscle because I was not sure of my strengths, my skills, and my personality. So for those who are watching and those who are able to get involved, do let me know. Which personality style are you? Where do you think that you fit within this circle? So if I was to focus on myself, I think I'm a plain right extrovert. I'm very red and yellow, which means that when I'm working with those who are green or blue, I have to change my personality around, but often there's a lack of miscommunication. But when I was working in the corporate world, I also misaligned my personality with the work that I was doing. And so I showed up to every day thinking, well, I'm not good enough, I'm not capable enough, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. And so it's extremely important to understand who you are as a person. And at the same time, what your opportunities are around you, where you are aligning or misaligning yourself with your business, with your work, even with your friendship. Natasha, I've seen your comment. It's great. So Natasha says that she's just opened a shop in West Bromwich, West Midlands on the High Street. Resilience is key. Resilience is everything. Golden Ethic says that he, she, or them are an extrovert. Brenda says experiencing these barriers socially, both within and outside of work, is the point where she's considering emigrating. Natasha says I'm an extrovert, but can be an introvert where I need to be. And that's fundamentally so important to be aware, self-awareness, when it comes to resiliency, when it comes to your personality, when it comes to you as an individual. I'm an extrovert, but that doesn't mean that I don't need my batteries charged. But what that does mean is, unfortunately, in the workplace, in the corporate world, even in the world of business, they tend to have these biases thinking this is the box you fit into and this is what you are going to be doing. Again, I'm sharing all of this because today's topic is about mental health and resilience. But before we can really become stronger, we need to understand where we are lacking, where we have the strengths that we need to build, where fundamentally we don't need to really bother our time and effort, but really focus on the good and the great and move it forward. I have failed more times than I can imagine. But what I've also realized is, ironically, I wouldn't be in this position if I hadn't failed. If initially no one had shown up to my brunch club, I wouldn't be running a global social enterprise. If I hadn't felt out of place at work, I wouldn't have practiced in diversity and inclusion coaching and be working with brands globally. And most importantly, if I didn't or hadn't felt so alone, I wouldn't be able to present and publicly speak my views and educate others digitally, offline, and around the world. And fundamentally, when you are feeling lost, isolated, when you're going through various mental health syndromes, and at the same time, when you feel like you're just not resilient enough, it could be because you may be an imposter and you may feel like an imposter. So for those who don't quite know imposter syndrome is when and where you feel like a fraud. Imagine yourself going into your first day in the corporate world, in your first job, going through 5-6 interviews and thinking, right, I shouldn't be here, I'm not good enough. Imagine yourself running a business and pivoting and thinking, right, I shouldn't be doing this. Imagine yourself delivering this workshop and thinking, wow, nobody wants to hear me, nobody wants to listen, I'm not good enough. That's what it feels like when you feel like an imposter. You think I'm not good enough. You think I made it up as I went along. You feel like you're not qualified. You ask people for confirmation. Are you sure you want me to help you? Are you sure that you need it from me? And what we are doing at that moment is we're not building our resiliency muscle. We're not getting stronger, but we are actually undervaluing and undermining our qualities and overwhelming ourselves with anxiety and worry and stress that doesn't need to be there. Joe says the common line of, I failed many times, however, now I'm a millionaire. With all the failures, you learn to grow and change what you didn't get success from. I completely agree with that. I think failure is fundamental in new products, new innovations, new business, and upgrading. I use my phone as an example. I use the laptop as an example. Why is it that, Apple comes out with a new phone every year? Why is it Samsung do? Why is it Huawei does? Why is it that Zoom adapted its model during COVID? It's because it wasn't perfect to start with, but it's ever improving. So at some point, they must have failed for them to innovate and upgrade. In the same sense, we as people put too much pressure on ourselves to be 100% perfect and not enough focus in our skills, our strengths, our personality, and that muscle that we have to constantly build. But if you feel like an imposter, you're definitely not alone. 62% of adults feel like an imposter. 55% of women and 86% of millennials feel like an imposter. Natasha says, I love your message. You align with everything I'm about and my brand. There is always a silver lining no matter what the situation. And I love the fact, Natasha, that you've brought that up and you're sharing it. I love the fact that you're talking about it from your own experience. But that's so fundamental, right? People buy into people, they buy into your story. When my first brunch club failed, I was too ashamed to tell people. And so it wasn't meaningful. They were like, right, you avocado, smashed eggs, cool. You're just trying to do what? Like, why should someone believe you? Why should someone come into you? Why should someone believe your vision? It wasn't until I told them or mentioned the background as to why we started something, the insecurity I had, the lack of community I felt, the failures that I'd suffered or been a part of. It wasn't until then that people started coming through and saying, you know what? We want to be where you are. We want to support you. We want to help you. We believe you. And that's how you grow. Why do 86% of millennials feel like an imposter? I mean, that's a great question. One of the reasons is because we are always online. And so we live in this age where we have digital gratification, meaning You constantly want feedback. You want someone to constantly tell you you're doing good, you're doing bad, and give you information there and then. But at the same time, we compare ourselves to social media. Social media aesthetics are fundamentally perfect. They look and feel perfect, but that's a snapshot of someone in 24 hours. Just because today I'm going to share a picture of this doesn't mean that the rest of the day was just as great. It means I woke up in the morning and I didn't go for my run because I was lazy. It meant that I had breakfast at 11 a.m., far later than it should have. It means that there's emails that I haven't been able to reply back to. But because the internet tells us that everyone else is smashing it and successful, we feel like we're not good enough. So what are some of the things that you can do to find your power today and to find what makes you successful and to build that resiliency muscle? With something I call the 3 S's. 1 is to write down all the skills and strengths that you have. 2 is to write a success story for each skill or strength. And 3 is to note down what impact, change, or results have you driven. Margot says, I started having those thoughts since I was made redundant last year. And now, Margot, you're in a position where you can fundamentally change your life, where you can go back and think, right, here's the skills and strengths I have. Here's what makes me me. Here's the time I made that successful. There's where I impacted someone. Now, how can I wrap that up into a nice little present and go out to the world and reform, pivot my life so I'm living it the way I want to live, but most importantly, build that resiliency muscle so that it's not in a place where it's getting me down, but it's constantly being strengthened so that I can grow. And some fundamental things that you can start doing right now. Yes, you can identify your strengths. If you take the exercise we've shared before, go for it. You can talk it out. Unfortunately, a lot of us feel that we're going through this only thing, that nobody else understands us. And I believe that's not true. If anything, I know it's not true. Talk to your colleagues, your friends, your peers, even strangers on the internet. Join the LMF network community. We have a weekly meet and greet via Slack. It's half an hour, but at least you get to talk it out with new people. Document your successes and wins and constantly stop negative thoughts. Align your brain with your brand and your business and the better version of yourself that you want to become. Other things include self-reflection, finding a mentor or a coach. I know the NatWest, as per in the comments, have a mentoring scheme, but us at the LMF network, we also have a global mentoring scheme. It's absolutely free. This year, we have been able to match 150 mentors and mentees across 18 countries. And for our 2021, we already have a waiting list of more than 200 people. It's absolutely free and accessible. We have 3 company partners who have already said yes to supporting. And most importantly, we are aligning you with somebody who can support you in your growth and finding your passions and accelerating your career, whilst also encouraging reverse mentoring. Number 7, update your profile. Articulate the difference and the impact you've created. If you go on my LinkedIn profile, I'm constantly updating it so that the other person can see the difference I'm making and reach out to me so that you're not having to reach out to them. And lastly, share knowledge. Nothing says I know my stuff like sharing it with your network. That's how you can both beat imposter syndrome, how you can increase your confidence, how you can work on your mental health, and how you can build that resilience muscle. Things to consider today. What can you start doing today? What is going to change your life? Really simple things. I've listed 13 things here for everyone who is joining. Start a diversity Slack channel, as Lever did. Now, this is so that we, as individuals, can share diverse resources, inclusive information, and make everyone feel like they belong. Brynda, it's like-minded females. If you find it on LinkedIn, it'll be there, or at LMF Network. That is the name of the global mentoring program and the social enterprise that I run. Of course, you can add me on LinkedIn and you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram is at SONYABARLOWUK. Secondly, allow employees to develop their core hours of working and stay flexible. Third, try the round robin technique in all meetings for everyone to contribute. Meaning, if you are in a position where you're working for a corporate, you're building your business, you're building a brand, and you're talking to other people, one way to feel that you are stronger in your approach, confident in what you have to say and your suggestions, is to make sure that you get your word in, but also everyone else does. 4, ask questions from a place of curiosity and be honest about not knowing the answer. 5, share reading lists and podcasts from diverse talent. By diversity, I don't just mean racially. I mean people who are going through different various things in their life that you can learn from. Everything from chronic health to entrepreneurship to getting it wrong, failing and making mistakes. Celebrate your weekly successes during your stand-ups. Check in on your work from home colleagues and their mental health. Encourage inclusive community socials online. This is key in building resilience, community, and mitigating the factor of loneliness, is by making sure that inclusive events do not mean alcohol, wine tasting, and staying late online at 8 p.m. It means lunch and learns, active brunches, maybe a yoga session, maybe a quick exercise. And really checking in and making sure that you're celebrating events and holidays around you. Number 9, go for a walk or run. Number 10, make the most of your health insurance. Unfortunately, many of us who come from an ethnic background feel like therapy and asking for information is an issue. They feel like, hey, well, actually, that's not something we do in our society. So it's not something that we can encourage others to do. That's not right. And that's not fair. Therapy, talking to someone, really does help and it breaks down the stigma. 11, switch off all digital devices for half a day. I do it Friday night to Saturday morning. It changes everything. 12, consider Christmas events being inclusive. And lastly, and most importantly, take a day off for your mental health. Take a day off when you don't feel great, when your brain isn't working the way it should, when you are not 100%. I know we started from a place of resiliency. We started from a place of, how do I become stronger? How do I pivot? How do I adapt? How do I get back up when something goes wrong? But fundamentally, we need to figure out, are we in the right state of mind? Do we know our personality type and are we aligning with every opportunity that we have? Do we feel like an imposter? And if so, what are we doing to mitigate those feelings? And how are we building community through our forums, through our digital devices, through technology at this current moment? This is not about us being alone, but it's about us facilitating conversations and finding our people. This is about us being in a position where we really are actively considering making a difference. And where fundamentally mental health and resilience go hand in hand. I've failed. I've been alone. I have found my state of loneliness as something which I needed to figure out and get myself out of. And unfortunately, many of us are now. If we do not carry on building our muscle of resilience, if we do not carry on believing in ourselves and our ability and our strength, we are only going to get worse. If we do not focus on our mental health, our health emotionally, physically, we are going to get worse. And the point of this conversation is, as business owners, as business leaders, as those who have side hustles, as those who are hoping to one day start their own business or currently work for a business, we are consumed by technology, by digital media, by work, by content all the time. And so we need to actively take a step back and reflect, is this aligning to our goals, our morals? Is this aligning to where we want to be in the future? Is this aligned to the type of person I want to be, want to become, and am? And how is this affecting my mental health? How is this making me feel about myself? And is it really helping me to go back to a state of being able to try new things, not being afraid of what the result may be, and working and saying yes to new opportunities, which can help to build your brand, your business, but most importantly, flipping the narrative of failure. Failing is not a narrative where you haven't succeeded your goals. It's a temporary disruption. It's where your path, it's where there's a blockage in your path and you're realigning the way that you get to your end goal. If there's anything more that I can help you with when it comes to mental health and resilience, please let me know. I really hope that this session helps you in everything you are going through and everything that you may be wanting to discuss at the moment. Please know that you are not alone and that both I'm here to help, and I definitely know that NatWest are too.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Sonya, and for being with us here today. It was a really interesting talk, and we had quite a few incredible comments. So for anyone out there now, we've got time for questions. I have some that have been sent in advance, but I'm also happy to take any questions from the audience. So please do share them and I'll read them out. But what I'd like to ask you first, you touched on the bit about I thought it was an interesting point you made about people seeing other people on the internet and that kind of, I guess, affecting their mental health or potentially affecting the way that they view themselves and view others. Do you have any advice for anybody who maybe uses social media? For some people, I know it's maybe quite easy to switch off, but for others, especially if you're a business owner, social media is a really great platform to be able to promote your business, but it's also a platform where you will be looking at other businesses and your competitors. So do you have advice for people who kind of can't get that balance right of social media and comparing with others?
Such a great question. So fundamentally, last year when I went through what I went through with my corporate world, I decided to do my job and start fresh as my own brand, my own business owner, and then COVID hit. So of course, most of my actually 75% of my business was wiped out in March. In April, I had no income. And so to answer your question, I was also one of those people that needed to build and use social media constantly for me to build my brand, which I've done so far. But to kind of answer your question, yeah, there are a few tips I can give as someone who suffered and has had, kind of anxiety over my content, my posts, and why no one is really following me. One is to only check social media a certain number of times a day. So I try and limit it to kind of 5 times a day. I tried 3. I couldn't stick to 3. But 5 times, so kind of not the first thing in the morning, kind of early morning. I do it again around lunchtime. I'll do it during kind of late afternoon when I'm going in my kind of moment of I feel a bit lazy. I'm probably not going to get much work done. And then possibly one time again in the evening, I try and get off my digital devices or any social media content about 2 hours before I go to sleep. Similarly, do that with your emails as well. Have an out of office that clearly says, look, thank you for your message. If it's urgent, give me a phone call. Otherwise, I'll reply back to this email in 72 hours or so. And only check your emails a number of times a day so it doesn't overwhelm you. Thirdly, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, take time out for yourself, because if you are not 100%, then your business won't be either, because you are your business. And that's so important in the productivity. Fourthly, schedule social media posts. You don't actually have to do it yourself, right? There are so many tools out there and marketing tools that you can use, which I've used right now because I do the social media for my social enterprise as well as myself. And my social enterprise, I've scheduled it. So I kind of sit down on a Sunday or Monday for 3-4 hours and I schedule it for the week so I don't constantly have to be on. And lastly, most importantly, social media is not going to negatively affect you if you don't surround yourself with toxic people, meaning use the delete, block, and unfollow button to your, in any and every way that you want. Even your friends. I know friends that don't follow their own friends because sometimes you feel quite toxic and it's not aligned to your values, your goals, or what you want to do. So don't be afraid to say, look, I'm not going to follow you. I'm not going to connect with you. These are the only people I can follow because they're aligned to where I want to be in the future. And you know, the last thing I want to point out, because I appreciate that's a lot of tips, is if you aren't online for a day, honestly, nothing bad is going to happen. Like, the world is not going to break down at all, right? It's not going to lose an opportunity. You're not going to not get business. You're not going to not get paid. So you need to know that there is a world beyond social media. Social media is a tool. It's not the end goal.
Thank you. Those are some really great tips. We have a question from Joe W. I'm not sure if he was asking about the NatWest programs or the LMF network, but his question is, can anyone join? If you were referring to our programs, then yes, you don't have to be a customer. I've put an email box in the chat so you can contact us there if you need to, but also to you, Sonya, with regards to the LMF network.
Yeah,
can anybody join?
Yes, anyone and everyone can join. We very much encourage it. This year we had, like I mentioned, 150 mentors and mentees. 10% of our mentors were male. 100% of our mentees were women, non-binary, or from BAME backgrounds. 75% were from BAME backgrounds, but 100% were women or non-binary. Next year, we're opening up to absolutely everyone. So we've already got 50 mentees aligned. That's actually being sponsored by a educational forum. They're a mix of kind of gender, background, ethnicity, intersectionality. And mentors, we encourage everyone and anyone. I mean, the whole point of the network I've started was because, you know, I want it to be accessible and I want it to be inclusive, but most importantly, I really want to help upskill people in kind of areas which they lack, given the current climate with redundancies and job losses and even business owners having to pivot their own skill sets. It's fundamental that we are supporting individuals in doing so.
Thank you. And we have another question from Brenda. Did you receive support to start public speaking and or your business?
You know, great question. No, I kind of just did it. So I go back to that whole kind of sentiment around knowing who you're surrounding yourself with. Unfortunately, what I realized is I felt lonely, or I felt like I didn't have community, also because I had a really toxic friendship circle. So speaking is a natural skill of mine. I love to talk. But every time I spoke to them, it was, well, you've got nothing to offer and nobody wants to listen to you. And what I did is, you know, that's why that personality kind of element in the workshop, and that's why knowing yourself is so important, that I was misaligning my skills and my strengths with people who didn't necessarily understand, and they were making me feel like I wasn't good enough or wasn't confident. So to answer your question, once I took myself out of that circle and I realized that I had an opinion, I started sharing an opinion, but only on 5 topics or so that it wasn't noisy, so that I wasn't talking about everything. And so someone knew, or, you know, the people around me, especially as a business owner, they knew that I had specific areas of knowledge which can convert into expertise. I've messed up a lot when it comes to public speaking, but we have to remember that everyone is a human. And so I don't mind messing up. Like any of this recording, I'm not going to filter out. I'm not going to cut, you know, areas which I haven't spoken. I started a podcast called Strategically Winging It during COVID. Again, I don't edit out anytime we get anything wrong, because it's just natural. And then Brenda, with elements of supporting your business. So unfortunately, I didn't in the beginning get support per se. I did have great volunteers and an awesome team that kind of supported me. Last year, I was smart enough to get an advisory board who are all kind of trustees and volunteers of the business that truly helped. And once you start really recognizing what your goals are and your milestones are, then you can understand what that support may look like. So a great example being Shania actually led a workshop for us a couple of weeks ago on funding for business and especially new startups. That was core to our offering, and I reached out and asked for help. But until you know what you need help in, and you know what your goals are, and you know why your business even exists, you can't really go ask for help because you may be misaligned. So the point being is have, you know, a 12-month goal, have quarterly milestones, understand where you think you can fill the gap, and then identify where your kind of blind spots are, and reach out to your network to see how they can support you in fulfilling those blind spots.
Thank you. We have another question from Brenda, actually. She's asked, have you got any tips specifically for people from Black, Asian, or other minority ethnic backgrounds with regards to resilience?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think it's such a it's pretty ironic that actually those from ethnic backgrounds feel that they are less capable, or individuals feel that they are not good enough, or kind of, able to bounce back. And unfortunately, a lot of that is also to do with the challenges that we face in everyday life. Obviously, we in the Western society, I'll base it on the UK, less than 25% of the UK identify as BAME. And so when you are looking and comparing yourselves to business leaders, to founders, to entrepreneurs, to educators, to senior stakeholders, decision makers, even CEOs, you're not going to feel that you're represented. And so every time you take that step, you're thinking, wait, I do think I can do this, because you don't see people that look or feel like you having done it before. And so my point being that sometimes we confuse the lack of resiliency with a lack of representation. And so if you are brave enough and confident enough to take that change, you can be that change maker. Secondly, when it comes to resiliency, it very much is about strengthening that muscle and identifying your skills and your strengths and what you want to be known for versus what other people want you to be known for. That's across the board. And I guess those from ethnic background, especially right now, have it worse because there are conversations globally around discrimination and biases and racial problems. And just yesterday, actually, I was on the news talking about a new report that was released a couple of days ago by the BBC and the Wolf Institute that mentioned that now that we're working from home, discrimination is going to be on the rise. And my point is, discrimination was always there. It's going to rise up, but it was always there. And actually, I was interviewed on the telly yesterday, and the colleague who was not my colleague, but the colleague on the telly, the question was, when have you ever felt racism? And I was like, every day, because that's what I feel. And so my point being, there are certain people, individuals and businesses out there that may not feel what you're feeling, or have an understanding because they haven't lived their experience and they haven't been through that, or they have a different perception. Yes, you can educate and you can listen to them and you can take them on that journey. But at the same time, you can take a step back and think, right, I need to do what's best for me and prioritize building my business, building my brand, and really focus in, and not get caught up with negative comments or negative connotations. And the last is, when it comes to building resiliency for ethnic minorities, surround yourself with good people. Surround yourself with those who come from BAME backgrounds, those who specifically are able to support you in your growth, join communities, and don't feel like you're alone, because you're not alone. Just make sure that you are speaking up, showing up, and kind of sharing all the great work you're doing.
Thank you. So my next question, I believe that sometimes when it comes to resilience, a lot of the time, especially I think when we're young, it's almost reinforced that hearing the word no is a negative thing. And I think everyone, but in particular business owners, sometimes hearing that word no can feel like a bigger knock than maybe it's meant to be. Do you have any tips for kind of, I guess, that bounce back after hearing a no and kind of reframing your mind so it's not a no forever?
Yeah, it's such a great question. Actually, what I've realized as I've grown up is I don't like people telling me I can't do something. I just don't like it. I just think, how can you tell me I can't do something? So what I found is I've taken that word of no, or you can't do something, and framed it into, right, why is it that I got the no? What was the feedback? What is it that I can develop and improve, and then try again, if not in that opportunity, another opportunity. A really simple example, and it also answers Brinda's question beforehand, is when I first started public speaking, I didn't get paid for it. So I got I worked with really global brands, and when I asked for a budget, they were like, no. But I still did it. And I was like, why? At some point I was like, why am I not being paid? So that no wasn't, I will never get paid. That no was, building my brand, building my business, having case studies, having milestones, accomplishments that I can then share. So that no is never no. It's a not right now. Come back with more information so that you can sell it to us. And when it comes to business and arrangements and kind of structures, sometimes a no is the easiest thing to say, because genuinely as individuals and as humans, it's our like most favorite word. No and sorry, like British custom or whatnot. So the point is, it's not really a no. It's a not right now. We aren't able to accommodate what you're saying or what you want. But if you were to try again in a different circumstance, in a different way, come back to us and let's see what we can do. And fundamentally, that is resilience. That is becoming stronger. But also that's really toning in and owning your own sense of power and worth. We shouldn't let others make us feel inferior. What we should do is we should shift our mindset to say, right, what was missing from that presentation or from that bid or from that, kind of question that someone said no to me, or that there was a barrier.
Thank you. We had a comment from Golden Ethics, just to add to your point, to say no is not at the moment, but a yes always, which is quite a nice way to think about it. And then I guess my next question related to this, but I guess more around the kind of life events, big, as we are living in a pandemic, the big life thing that was never, like, you couldn't have seen coming from any position. What would you say is the most effective first step for building your resilience back when life happens and a knockback kind of comes out of the blue?
I think if you asked me this question 9 months ago, I probably would have had a different answer. But my first and my most honest answer to this is just roll with it. Just let your body go through whatever emotion it needs to go through, right? If that means cuddling to a Ben and Jerry's and binge watching Netflix for 3 days and crying, just do it. Get it out of your system. If that means jogging 50k because that's how you deal with things, if that means etc. So my point being is we've for some reason we're in this state of play, or this kind of in this society where we think, right, we have to always be on and we have to always be productive. But actually sometimes you can just be sad and you can be angry and you can be annoyed and you can be frustrated. And once those emotions have come out and they've done what they need to do, then you get up and you think, right, what's my plan of action? There is no point, and I firmly believe there's just no point of having a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year plan, right? That it's just not a thing anymore, because life as we know it can change overnight. So stick to 12 to 18-month plans. Filter them down to quarterly milestones. The quarterly milestones, put them into months, and track your progress and what you're trying to achieve. At the same time, limit and streamline what you're doing. What I found from my own experience is the more I do, the noisier I get, the less I am focused and good at something. So you want to be good at something. You want to be known for 3 to 5 things maximum, but you don't want to be great. You don't want to be okay at everything, because then you're not the go-to person. And lastly, it's lean on others for support. Some people obviously maybe don't have the friends or family at the moment, but I can tell you that some of my best friends right now are ones who I direct messaged, normally on Instagram, to say, hey, I think you're doing something super cool, inspiring. Do you mind jumping on a 15-minute phone call so we can go through it with you? Those are now some of my closest friends, because you're able to come together in a similar state of play and see what you can do. And the last thing is, similar to what Yvonne just said. Yvonne says, I like to remind myself that nothing lasts forever and we don't know what tomorrow may bring. If anything, this pandemic has showed us that we have no idea if tomorrow is even going to come, and if it's going to come online or offline. So just live every day as if tomorrow's not going to come. Really simple things, but go and grab that coffee. Go and meet that person for dinner or for lunch. Send that email. Try a new business plan. Reach out to someone that you haven't reached out to before. What's the worst that can happen? I mean, I started a podcast not knowing how to edit. I still don't know how to edit. Like it's not the best edited format, but it's interviews, and it's not well marketed, but I have it booked now for the next 6 months. That podcast is fundamentally what's got me a book deal. If I didn't start the podcast, I wouldn't have a book deal. I probably wouldn't be in a position where I'm acknowledging the person I'm becoming, and how this pandemic has, yes, exhausted me, but also given me opportunities that we wouldn't have done so before.
Thank you. And someone sent me a question earlier, and they used a Nelson Mandela quote, which is, "The greatest glory in living rests not in never failing, but in rising every time we fail." So what keeps you going on a personal level when you've experienced failure?
Yeah, I mean, if we're being quite honest, I have a lot of energy. So for me, it's like, where does all that energy go? I think, having thought about this over the last few weeks, it's a number of things. But one of the things is, I don't like people and circumstances telling me I can't do something. That personally fuels me, just to prove them wrong. I am very internally competitive. So I'm like, right, because you said I can't do it, I'm going to do it just to prove that I can do it. But more than that, it's because when I was younger, I went to an all-girls school. We lived in, the school itself is extremely multicultural, but everyone and everything around me looked and felt the same. And I grew up in a state of play where many young girls didn't really have big dreams. They didn't know they could become more than what their parents were. They didn't even know there was like an outside to the area that we were living in. And so what really drives me is knowing that I can fundamentally change the path and the futures and the dreams of these young people. It doesn't matter how they identify, but it's them knowing that, hey, if someone from a council estate who's the first to go to university, who grew up from a working class family, can sit on a live with NatWest and talk about her book, and like be very vocal about her self-identity and the personality type she is, maybe I can too. That's what fuels me. It's being able to lead change and create change and represent a voice that maybe many of us don't actually hear, but definitely exists.
Okay, thank you so much. And then I guess my final question before we sign off, unless our audience bring any questions in, is, with the ups and downs of lockdown, and maybe from a personal perspective, family gatherings looking very different than they would have in previous years, what advice can you give to our audience members to keep their spirits up, so that in January next year we can get back to that place of setting those goals and having those aspirations for our personal lives and our professional and business lives?
Yeah, there's sometimes social media has great content, and it reminds you that not everyone is suffering. Actually, some people are really enjoying this time to stay at home and not to commit to plans and not to have to go out. And if you think about it, and again, being quite honest here, we were able to go out and really enjoy ourselves in the summer period, which was nicer anyway. But in the winter, maybe we think of it as a blessing that actually we don't really have to go out. We don't really have to leave our house. We can stay indoors. We can obviously go for exercise and fresh walks and kind of to get a fresh breath of air. But there's no real commitment. For those who are commuting, you don't maybe have to commute 3-4 hours a day to get to work, and you can work from home. Yes, when it comes to family, unfortunately, that is where, and friends, that is where many of us have kind of lacked and suffered. But we equally have to be very grateful that many of us, and not everyone, because technology poverty is a real thing, live in a place where we have the accessibility on our phones and our laptops to FaceTime and to interact and to go on WhatsApp. Like, my family and I always make the joke, because I don't live with my family, I live with my partner, that if this was, even 20-25 years ago, how would we be talking to each other? Like, I wouldn't be able to really see them. I wouldn't be able to see my niece on FaceTime, and she wouldn't necessarily recognize me as an individual. So, of course, this is challenging times, but we just have to stick together as a society to get through it. Use technology my first TED talk is actually called Please Come Online. It's how we can use tech to build community. So use tech as a tool to find friends, to talk to people, to keep in touch. Use it as a way to kind of really move on and kind of maybe during this period learn a new skill and learn to cook that dish that you wanted to cook, or go on that run that you wanted to run, or start meditation, for example. But I think what we can do as individuals right now is, in order to really shift our brains and to become more resilient, we need to stop approaching everything as what is happening because we have a lack of, and we have to look at things as a glass half full narrative. We have to know that this is a temporary disruptor, that really new beginnings, new ways of working, new lives have to be born at the back of that. And so my question as I leave everyone is, I'm not asking you to start a new business or to, quit your job or to do anything of that kind. But my question is, how are you going to enjoy this time and make it work for you in the way that you want it to? Because really, and hopefully, and I pray, we'll never get this time again. Hopefully we'll never go through a global pandemic. So how are you making this time work for you in a way that maybe you didn't have the time for before, but now you do? What are you doing that now you can really focus on and build a skill or a friendship or a business or a brand, or ways to relax that you couldn't beforehand?
Thank you very much, Sonya, and I'm sure our audience are joining me in giving you a very warm round of applause from our living rooms. And thank you to everybody who joined and also engaged with each other today. Next up in our Powering Our Community series, we have In Conversation with Kalpna Wolf. Kalpna has been a major influence for change, both at senior board and grassroots level. Following an award-winning career with the BBC as head of production, Kalpna has established 2 game-changing organisations, Be On Board, whose aim is to diversify business boards, and 91 Ways to Build a Global City, an innovative charity which reaches out to all the 91 language communities in Bristol, as well as holding positions on both business and charity boards. So please do join me next week on the 25th, where we'll be discussing her experiences, what she's learned, and her tips for success. And until then, please stay safe and stay blessed. Thank you.
Thank you so much.